Yesterday, I had the privilege of talking with Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison in a network exclusive interview. We talked about everything from the Derek Chauvin verdict to the fight over reproductive rights. But we started our conversation with his latest endeavor with our friends from the Great North Innocence Project. Your office has established a conviction review unit together with the Great North Innocence Project, who we've had on the show several times. Now, it's a unique partnership and one that's actually one of 4 statewide conviction units in the U.S. So talk to me about why this is so important and what you hope to accomplish.
This effort is important because prosecutors should lead the cause of justice. And when we have credible evidence that there's an innocent person, we shouldn't wait around for the defendant or the defendant's lawyer to bring a motion in court. If we have credible evidence that they're innocent, we should step up and do something about it. In fact, America incarcerates more people than any other country in the world, including China, which we're 1/3 the population of. And it stands to reason that there are some people who are in prison who shouldn't be there. So let's do the right thing. Let's dig into it. Prosecutors are supposed to be ministers of justice, not just belt notchers who convict people. And so we take that role seriously. And so this is our expression of doing that, taking it seriously. A conviction review unit where we will review anybody's case. We have over 300 applications now. And some people may not fit our criteria, but there are some that do, and we're going to try to bring justice for.
You know, we talk about prosecutorial misconduct on a weekly basis on this show, and there isn't enough accountability for prosecutors. We definitely hone in on officers, police officers, but not enough on prosecutors in general. What makes this actually different from those integrity units that are actually housed within local DA offices?
Well, it's statewide, and we think we do need a statewide purview. The truth is that in some of our more heavily populated areas, you might have a little bit more accountability for the prosecutor, more resources to bear, more law schools, more folks who can look over their shoulder and check their paper. But in some areas, in rural areas where there's really not that many resources around, you do need somebody with a statewide purview to check out and investigate and sometimes reinvestigate credible claims of innocence. And so it's important that we're statewide.
All right. So, Keith, I want to take you back to April 20th of this year. You knew that was coming, right? The day that the verdict, was rendered in the Derek Chauvin trial. What was going through your head as the guilty verdicts were being read one by one?
You know what? I mean, I was surprised right up until that moment. Up until the verdicts were read, I wasn't sure that those would be the verdicts. And I know a lot of people, and right. Well, in hindsight, maybe I should have had a clue, right? But the truth is, history was on Derek Chauvin's side. I mean, look what happened in the state case in Rodney King. Look what happened in the state case in Walter Scott. Look at the 4 years that it took to bring action against Jason Van Dyke, who murdered Laquan McDonald. I mean, there is a lot of cases where there was video, there were witnesses, there was evidence of cover-up, and there were either hung juries or acquittals or no charges at all. I mean, in fact, in the Michael Brown case, the jury was misinstructed, the grand jury was, and they issued a no bill when basically the prosecutor gave the jury the wrong law to apply. And, that's got to be problematic, right? But it passed muster in that situation. So there are many more cases where there's been a lack of accountability, where there seems to be obvious misconduct, where there has been accountability.
Well, as a former prosecutor, I never went into a trial thinking that, I had a slam dunk, right? Even if my evidence was airtight, but you had the evidence. You had that 9 minutes and 29 seconds of footage that the entire world saw. So, while, those were great examples of cases where there was video and it ended up, resulting in the officer walking, This video was different. Why do you think that is?
You know what? I'm not sure it was too different. I think what was really different is that we started out preparing the case as if we didn't have any video. And then we slotted in the video to augment our case. We did not depend upon the video. We depended on the witnesses. We depended upon putting forth a strong case. But let me just point out to you, and you know this stuff because you've done this work. You know, we were concerned that the prosecutor might successfully argue that he didn't die from the low oxygen, but instead from, you know, stenosis in his arteries leading up to his heart, or that he had an enlarged heart, or that maybe he overdosed on drugs. He did have trace amounts of methamphetamine and opioids. They didn't kill him. No, the medical examiner didn't say that had any causal role. But for people who want to acquit the Derek Chauvin, they could have relied on that. You know, drug equals what? Drug rhymes with thug, you know? And if they could have convinced the jury that that's really what happened, that could have made a difference. I mean, so there were ways that a jury that did not want to buy our theory could have escaped and come to some other conclusion. And then, of course, they could have found on a lesser included. We had 3 charges. They could have found on a lesser. So, I mean, guilty verdicts on all 3 counts. You know, in my mind, I was surprised when we heard it. I'll also tell you another thing that occurred to me, which is right after the verdicts were read and he stood up and turned around and put the cuffs on. It was clear to me that his life was going to change in a very dramatic fashion. And, you know, quite honestly, having been on the defense side of the table many years, you know, I'm like, wow, it's too bad that somebody who the public trusted to protect us is now gonna serve time in prison for doing the opposite. You know, it's not good news when a police officer is convicted of murder. That means that a lot of bad things happen. That means somebody's dead. It also means somebody who had an oath and a trust to do right by the public did not do it. So in many ways, it was, I felt a little sad, but you know, we moved forward and we sought the highest sentence we could get. We thought that was important to do. But I gotta say that, I mean, the downside of prosecuting is that you've now proved that that one person's dead and another person has broken our laws. But, you know, you mentioned a moment ago that there was, you know, people only see one victim. But let me tell you, I think that everybody who watched Derek Chauvin murder George Floyd is somewhat of a victim, because what they saw is the people entrusted with our protection commit a murder. How does 9-year-old Judea supposed to not see that? And she's 9, but one day she's going to be 29. And what does she tell her kids about what she witnessed with her own eyes? What is 17-year-old Darnella Frazier? How is she supposed to carry forth and have the trust in law enforcement, which she is entitled to have? I mean, these are all, I mean, Derek Chauvin's crime was not just to George Floyd or his family. He injured the trust of the public that they're supposed to enjoy. So I'll just throw that in because that's kind of what struck me out of all this.
Our conversation doesn't stop there. Next, Minnesota's AG, Keith Ellison, weighs in on some of the top legal issues in the country. The verdict in the Derek Chauvin trial was a huge accomplishment, but Minnesota's AG, Keith Ellison, says he has much more to do. You tweeted that you would do everything in your power to fight against it. How are you joining that fight?
Well, we're suing where we need to sue. We're filing amici briefs with our colleagues. We're speaking up for the right. Here's the thing, you know, every person ought to have personal autonomy. You know, what does it mean that some congressman somewhere can tell you how many kids to have, whether to space them, whether you should get birth control or not? Whose business? How is it their business, right? These same people who fight me every day in court over wearing a mask want to tell you whether you can have a baby now or not. And by the way, it's not just about abortion, it's about reproductive freedom. Because there was one time when they used to make black women have babies, made them have babies, and so they could sell them. Right? That's what slavery is all about. They said, that gal, we're gonna pay you a lot of money because I bet she can have 20 kids, make a lot of money for me. And now they want to stop people from having them when they can't afford them or for some reason can't raise them. I mean, it's choice, it's freedom. That's what it's all about. And I mean, it's just shocking to me that the people who, won't even take a shot, even though you and I have had plenty of vaccines, everything from whooping cough to smallpox to whatever. We take vaccines all the time. Now I don't want to take this. Fine, don't take one. Then you got to have a test. I don't have a test. So you just want to run around spreading COVID, and that's your right to give me COVID, but you want to tell her that she's got to have a baby that she's not in a position to deliver at this point in her life. I mean, it's just nuts to me.
To watch the entire interview, make sure you head over to bnc.tv or go to our YouTube page. All right, before we go, we want to remind you to tune in each night for our continuing coverage of the R. Kelly racketeering and sex trafficking trial. The case could be in the hands of the jury any day now, which means we'll officially be on verdict watch. And as we go over some of the biggest moments during this 5-week trial.